Welcome to this week's EdTech Pulse. Today, I am super excited to share with you our guest speaker. So, I'm sure you're getting tired of hearing me and my partners talk, and so I would love to welcome Julia McLeod, our assessment consultant, here today to talk some backward design with Copilot. So, Julia, thank you for joining us.
Lovely to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
I'm going to just pull up our slides for today, and then you can get started and jump into that whole idea of how we can use AI to support um, us in our teaching with through backwards design. And
Yeah, wonderful.
so let's do that now.
Okay, so I think for those of you who've been interacting with artificial intelligence, or even if you haven't yet interacted with artificial intelligence, I think there's a lot of questions that are coming up for teachers as we start living in this new world. So I have this quote for you. It is from Richard Collada, the CEO of the International Society for Technology in Education, and he says, "Did ChatGPT kill assessments? They were probably dead, and they've been in zombie mode for a long time. What ChatGPT did was call us out on that." So,
That's so true.
yeah, I really like this quote, and Nicole, you're the one who actually shared it with me, um, because it's really true. As we've been working with teachers over the past few years in assessment pedagogy and how do we refine our practice, we end up realizing that sometimes our traditional or fallback methods of assessing uh, do pose problems for cheating or for plagiarism. And it's not always that the internet causes this or that uh, artificial intelligence causes cheating and plagiarism. It's sometimes our assessment, the way that we designed it. Are students engaged? Do they know what the task is? Is the task actually aligned to the outcome, or is it more a knowledge-based task? So in this episode, we're going to look at how we as teachers could use artificial intelligence in our own practice to revamp and realign our assessments to learning outcomes. And how do we do this? We do this through backwards design. So, backwards design is quite simple. It's 3 steps. One, the identification of the learning goal. And we pull this from our program of study or our curriculum. So these are learning outcomes in grade 7 to 12 education in Alberta. Those are your general outcomes and your specific outcomes. And in new curriculum, we have just our learning outcomes for kindergarten to grade 6. So we want to read those and identify the learning goals. Then teachers determine acceptable evidence of learning. What evidence of learning do I need to collect to show that students actually have achieved these learning goals? And the third one is to design learning engagements and or assessments that will help us document this evidence of learning. So, uh, construct dilemma. This comes from Dylan William. I was listening to one of his webinars earlier this year, I think just a month ago or so, and he speaks about how we live in a little bit of a dilemma in relation to uh, the constructs we put forward to teach. So, what he means by this is just many educators, subject area specialists, and even the general public will often debate what should be taught to students. This could be from content of curriculum to hidden curriculum to other pieces that should be taught to students in schools. And what he says is sometimes, actually often, this debate about construct threatens assessment validity. So we need to be really clear on what it is we should be assessing and reporting on for, for determining student learning. So in Alberta, what construct do we follow? We follow the Alberta Program of Study. So if it's not in the program of study, we do not assess it or report on it formally. It can be part of your teaching. We can embed it and infuse it. But if it's not an outcome, we don't actually design an assessment around it. The second thing is, how do we ensure assessment quality? we have to do this through backwards design. And backwards design will also help us honor the learning of our students. So here's a quick little icon or image that I kind of threw together quickly to see so that we could see the the process of backwards design. So if we look at it kind of like nesting circles, the first place we want to start is the learning outcome, and it's kind of like a target. This is what should be taught. It's our Alberta program of studies. Then we're going to design learning goals and success criteria. These three blue circles are really the foundational pieces to support teacher clarity. And what we mean by teacher clarity is simply these three questions. What am I learning? Why am I learning this? And how will I know that I have learned it? Or how will the teacher know that the student has learned it? So these are learning intentions, relevance, and success criteria. Once we have this foundation, we can design our assessment of learning, more of that summative assessment piece that's going to come in, and we can design our assessment as and for learning. So that interaction of uh, feedback and reflection and metacognition so that students are really engaging in that learning piece. That's why those two circles are, those two colors are in a bigger circle. And then that blue guided practice, activation of prior knowledge, modeling, collaborative practice, and independent practice.
And I think too, Julia, in the whole idea of clarity, even with the use of AI, something that's also important, and you kind of touched on it back on that other page as well, was when we're talking about following the program of studies, the Alberta program of studies, a lot of the AI tools that are out there for educators right now, we need to be aware of, aren't always pulling from our Alberta program of studies. And so this is where, within our division, we are using Copilot. And so that's where that piece becomes really easy for us because we can specifically state that. Some of the other tools out there that have the prompt engineering already built in that are kind of easier fixes for teachers because all they have to do is click a button, they sometimes pull from other curriculums. So we need to also be very much aware of that.
Yeah, or several different curriculums. And that's where that construct dilemma comes in again, is if we're pulling from all over the place, well, it's not actually aligned to what Alberta students should be learning.
Exactly.
So here's a question. What is your biggest hurdle with backwards design planning? I think many teachers know backwards design. They've it's been talked about for years in education. I even remember my undergrad training was all about backwards design. But I guess what is the biggest hurdle?
I think I know the answer. Are
Yeah,
we ready? Yeah.
time. It takes a lot of time. I know for myself, sometimes, actually, I shouldn't even say sometimes, it's all the time. I'm quite a type A teacher when it comes to planning. I'm quite meticulous in all the things that I want to write down and make sure I've thought through. And if you're like me, you know that a robust backwards design plan can actually take several weeks, if not months, to write out
Right.
fully.
Well, and for you, who's kind of an expert in this space, as you are, an assessment consultant, I know you were talking that it would take you a solid 2 hours, right, to just like kind of dive into one
Mhm.
piece. But you've already used your template a million times, and so with the use of AI, how long do you think it takes you now?
So for one lesson plan, that would typically take me a good solid hour or hour and hour to 2 hours to create. You can do it with AI in under 20 minutes. So
It's
uh,
crazy.
just following some basic prompt engineering protocols or statements, we can actually generate something that's quite robust quite quickly.
All right, let's check this out.
Yeah, so here's our first iteration of the backwards design with AI protocol. We'll run you through it because it's a great starting piece, and I'll just speak to different things we found out as we've been using it, and some overlays that you could put into these prompts. So the very first step is always start with the learning outcome from the Alberta Program of Study. If you're using legacy curriculum or the curriculum that grade 7 to 12 is still using from the Alberta Program of Studies, that's our general outcomes and specific outcomes, using either of the types of outcomes works. using that general will obviously provide a more general explanation of how you could scaffold and teach. But if you use those specific outcomes, you will get something a lot more precise and accurate to what Alberta students are supposed to be learning. One thing that AI does wonderfully is it is great at coupling outcomes. So if you're reading through the curriculum and your general outcome has 7 specific outcomes underneath it, but 3 of them relate to each other because they're kind of scaffolded, copy them all together, and AI does a wonderful job at sorting through that. So we selected our learning outcome. We read through it. We made sure that we understood the verb. What's the depth of understanding that a student is supposed to have there in relation to Bloom's taxonomy? What's the concept? What's the knowledge? All of those pieces. The next thing we want to do is write a learning intention. So I love using the general outcome for this because then I have one learning intention that I could use for several days as I move through the specific outcomes. So the first thing you want to prompt AI to do, and I'm talking about generative AI like Copilot or Chat GPT, but Copilot is actually doing the best job right now as we've been using it. So definitely use Copilot as an ECSD teacher. Nicole, do you
Number
want to?
one, number one, we've talked about this before, that it is encrypted, so the information is safe. The security of it has been approved by our legal department, and so this is that tool that we want to use. Um, Knowing that there are multiple different generative AIs that are out there, but the thing is ultimately you don't know where that data is being stored. So ChatGPT, for example, you don't necessarily know where that is being stored. But also Copilot, there's been a lot of tests done lately with a lot of educational experts, and they're finding either the paid versions of some of those generative AIs or Copilot are the most effective ones. And so noting too that with Copilot, it does use ChatGPT 4, which is the 4.0 version, the paid version of that. And so having that encryption through ECSD to have that security piece is really an additional bonus for us.
Yeah, thanks for that. So, so back to learning intention. So we're in Copilot. I would choose balanced or precise. You have 3 levels to choose from when you're in Copilot: creative, balanced, and precise. Balanced and precise are going to actually help it pull from Alberta curriculum and actually cite those documents. So definitely choose either balanced or precise. And this is the prompt I give it. Can you write a learning intention for 14-year-old students? The reason why I use the age of the students is because internationally, grade 7 could look a lot different from country to country. That could be a range of anywhere from 9-year-olds to 12-year-olds. So be very precise at the age range of your students. Um, a level up to this prompt would also be to add in some demographics of your students. If you have English as an additional language learners, or if you have students who have maybe missed a concept that is foundational to the outcome, you can definitely add it in at this point. So can you write a learning intention for 14-year-old students who are English as an additional language learners using this learning outcome? And this is where I just copy and paste that general outcome from the program of study.
So actually even going straight to Learn Alberta or to Alberta Ed to get at that, right?
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes it will prompt a paragraph, which is not exactly what I want. So what I notice is in my first prompt, I missed stating that I wanted it in 1 sentence or less, or 10 words or less. So I often say, can you rephrase this learning intention into student-friendly language using the sentence starter we are learning? I also ask it to break that learning intention into 2 learning intentions, or I give it a word count limit so that I can refine that to something that's very simple and precise that all my students could interact with.
So this is where it's really important to make sure that we give it parameters, right? With the length that you want, the number of words, the number of sentences, as well as giving the more precise instructions and information that it needs to be able to get the actual prompt or the output that you want in the first round.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, now caveat, it's going to come back often, is after every time that you choose to keep something from generative AI, do exercise your professional body of knowledge and your professional judgment. So you as a teacher in Alberta have to adhere to the teacher quality standards, and in specifically in 3A, B, and C, it requires you to use your professional judgment. So do make sure it's completely aligned with that learning outcome from the program of study, and that it is accurately writing out what you would like to use in your classroom.
And so knowing that there's a lot of inaccuracies in AI, that is something that is definitely always a required lens. You always need to read. You can't just do a copy paste. You can do a copy paste and edit, but please make sure that you are reading through all of those components, because sometimes it does pull information that has nothing to do with what you put in for your input and what you're
Yeah,
looking for. So really important.
exactly. Okay, so this is my favorite part. This is where specific outcomes for that legacy curriculum or for new curriculum, those cusps, knowledge, understanding, skills, and procedures, can really be coupled together to create a list of success criteria. So what I mean by success criteria are often, we see it often in education, those I can statements, those really tangible checklist pieces that can be thrown into a single point rubric or even an analytical rubric with different levels of proficiency in relation to them, that really help students interact with what are the specific tasks or pieces of knowledge or understandings that they need to achieve for success. So the prompt that I find works the best is, can you write success criteria for the following specific outcomes? And then I copy and paste them down. Again, if that does not promote what you want, you're going to need to refine it. Um, Ask the list to be in student-friendly language. Again, give the age range of your students, their ability levels if need be, or any diverse learning needs they may have. Um, and you can always prompt it with the sentence starter, I can, or ask it to phrase it in questions such as, can I? And it does a great job at generating that list. It will often over generate. You won't use all 10 or 15 or however many statements that the generative AI puts out for you. But this is where on the next slide, we need to use our professional body of knowledge and we need to refine that list. And when it comes to success criteria, um, less is more. So really choose the statements that directly relate to those specific outcomes and the ones that are truly scaffold the students into achieving the general outcome. So making sure that that list that you select is really concise and representative of the program of study.
And I like that you like added in that audience, right? And so the learning intention is going to be different um, than your success criteria, right? So your success criteria, you are wanting in that child-friendly language. And so again, using that age piece as well, you can definitely ask it for whatever kind of tone you want as well.
Yeah. All right, and then this is where it gets fun. If you're running this all in the same chat in Copilot, you did the learning intention, so the general outcome is in the chat. You did the success criteria, so the um, specific outcomes are in the chat. You can ask it then to simply design you a series of assessments or lessons or activities that will show student achievement of those outcomes or of the success criteria. Sometimes you can copy and paste your list of I can statements back in so that if you've really refined that list, it's only going to work on the ones that you selected. Um, but yeah, this is where it gets fun, and the opportunities are endless for what you could use generative AI to help you design.
And I know too that Julia does have a really great template that we will share also in the Sway today. So the link will be in there so that you can access that to be able to do your copy and paste to actually build your formal backward design plan. But also know that you can actually ask Copilot to put it into a table for you, and and just tell it what you want for its columns and what you want for the rows, and it will organize that information too for you. So it's come a long ways from when we first initially started playing with it, where we did build our own templates for it.
Hmm. And on
Um,
that note, it'll generate rubrics as well. If using these I can statements that you've selected, you can ask it to do um, to create either single point rubrics. It'll create an Excel file for you that you can just easily copy and paste into whatever format you need for your students, or even analytical rubrics. And one thing that I do recommend if you're going to do analytical rubrics is go get the descriptors of the levels of achievement that we have on our ECSD SharePoint. Use those. Say, hey, I want these to be my 4 columns. These are the descriptors. This is what it means. Can you put that in relation to my I can statements? And it'll create you an analytical rubric that again gets exported into Excel. And now you have a rubric that instead of taking maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours to create, you create it in minutes.
and we'll share that link too in this way as well, so you can have a quick access to it. And so with that, then you also have a few other pieces in there.
Yeah, so um, this is again the fun part of designing all those tasks or assessments. So I think this one's showcasing where um, the AI came up with a case study examination in like a cross comparison chart. So group A is going to look at this case study, group B is going to look at that one, group C is going to look at that one, and then we're going to compare as a class. Um, and I think I was just prompting it to generate case study after case study. So this is where your content knowledge and your expertise comes into play, because it's pulling from the entire internet here. Maybe these case studies are fictional. Maybe they are accurate. Maybe they're inaccurate. So that's where you do want to vet them a little bit before you actually give them out to students. But it was really helpful in coming up with some materials that I could actually use with my students as well.
So using it as an example generator for those case studies.
Yeah,
So another way to use the AI, the Copilot.
yeah. Okay, so for new curriculum, we've been working on some specific prompts. So um, one thing that we've really found interesting that it can do is now that we have new curriculum that's divided into one learning outcome with several knowledge, understanding, and skills and procedure pieces underneath that learning outcome that aren't formally assessed but work together to generate evidence of students' ability in relation to the learning outcome, is uh, what type of tools would we need? So the first one is a factual question. So how am I going to know what my students know in relation to the knowledge statements in the new curriculum? And factual questions are a great way to do that. So we created this prompt, sorry, to help us create factual questions based on the knowledge statements that are in the curriculum on New Learn Alberta. So it reads, can you write factual questions for age of students? Um, that will help uh, a teacher reveal the depth of understanding or the depth of knowledge that a student has in relation to the following statements. And then I copied and pasted the knowledge statements that I wanted it to create questions for. I think I copied up to 8 knowledge statements in one go, and it created an awesome scaffolded list of questions I could ask to my students either on the fly in the classroom or give them as exit tickets for my students. So here's
Cool.
some sample output. What is a conclusion? Who makes conclusions? How are conclusions different from opinions?
Excellent.
The next piece is how am I going to reveal the depth of understanding a student has in relation to the understanding statements. So a similar prompt is, can you rate conceptual questions that check the understanding of age of students for the following statements? And then copy and paste your understandings. Now with the understandings for new curriculum, I suggest you only put one statement in. uh, if you put more than one of the understanding statements, it really gets confused. So
Becomes too big.
yeah, knowledge statements were good to couple, but the understanding statements, just one. So
Perfect.
here's some sample output. How does paying attention to the details directly mentioned in a text help you understand the story or content? Can you also share how thinking about things that are not directly said can add more to what you know?
You could almost even ask it to give you an example of a visible thinking routine that you could use to support the questioning that you have going on and have been given from the AI as well.
Yeah, and especially in Copilot, if you're on that balanced or more precise, I could almost guarantee it's going to pull from Harvard University and actually pull from those visible thinking websites.
Very cool.
And the last one, obviously, this one's probably where we're most familiar with is those skills and procedures. So those actionable statements that students have to interact with to show what they know, understand, and can do. So performance tasks are a really great way to document and assess the skills and procedures. And generative AI, especially Copilot, does an awesome job at designing different types of performance tasks that are outside of quizzes, tests, or written assignments. So by giving it a lot of parameters on exactly what you're looking for, if you want a project, if you want a visible thinking routine, if you want a concept attainment activity, just add it into the performance task. But very simply is, can you design a performance task based off of the following success criteria for students ages whatever years old, and copy and paste the skills and procedures statements from the cusps. So these skills and procedures kind of already behave like our success criteria, and we can design performance tasks.
And you can even ask it to give you a few different options, right? Because then you can actually put it into a bit of a choice board to give students a little bit of voice and choice in what the way that they want to represent their thinking as well.
Yeah, exactly. I bet you could even ask it to create that choice board for you, and it'll put it into
100%.
an Excel.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And this is my favorite one. I feel like this is a piece that we often forget when we are working in assessment of our students' knowledge, understanding, and their abilities in relation to outcomes is the transfer of knowledge. So if you were to carefully read our levels of achievement, the beginning, the approaching standard, the proficient, and the standard of excellence, in each of the descripting levels, the word transfer of learning comes up. And what these statements mean is, to what degree can a student transfer their learning to new contexts? So to actually get a proficient and even that standard of excellence, to get the proficient, students need to be reliably transferring their knowledge. They may not always transfer it, but they need to be reliably. This means that they're making connections within the subject area at hand. To get that standard of excellence, these are students who are consistently transferring their knowledge. They're seeing connections all over the place. They might even be connecting cross-curricular as well. So the concepts taught in math might come out for them in science, and they're seeing those connections, and they're really reliably transferring their um, their understandings. So one, we need to make sure that our performance tasks that we design allow them to do that in the first place. And then the second thing we need to do uh, is actually check, are they transferring? And how can we check if they're transferring? Two ways that we can do that is through debatable or provocative questions. So debatable and provocative questions are kind of those big picture questions that don't have a right or wrong answer. And what we're looking for is the depth of understanding that comes through as we pose these questions to our students. So the prompt is, can you write debatable or provocative questions that help teachers unveil the depth of conceptual understanding and learning transfer that a age of student has in relation to these statements? And this is where we want to copy throughout the band of cusps. So we want to put our knowledge statements, we want to put our understanding, and we want to put our skills and procedures into this. So it's a big copy and paste job to write these questions, but this is where we actually see that connection between all of the cusps start living. Um, it will give you way too much, more than you need. So I ask it always to choose too debatable and too provocative. I find it weans it down a little bit more, and then I can make a better selection. But here's an example of an output for these types of questions. In your opinion, should schools focus more on teaching students to recognize explicit details or to become skilled at uncovering implicit meanings, and why?
And you know what? Even if you ask it, so if you give it the parameters right off the bat and ask it to do that, and you don't really like those two questions that it gave you for the debatable, just ask it to regenerate. It's really simple then too. And so note that setting the parameters right off the bat usually gets you your output that you want a lot faster, but sometimes it isn't perfect. So you can then refine it and ask it to regenerate or give you two other questions um, instead of like getting it to give you all that information and then trying to simplify it. Sometimes that can
Mhm.
take a lot, it could be a longer process.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I guess like I just wanted to say thank you. Like, are there any last like tips that you have to share with our audience, our viewers on the
I
EdTech
think
Pulse?
I think just try feeding it the Alberta curriculum and interact with it in that sense. I think if you give it explicitly what you're trying to anchor into, I think you will get output that is more usable in your classroom in our context.
And I think with Copilot too, because it does actually cite its sources, you can actually just ask it to pull from the new curriculum from the Learn Alberta website as well. So you might not always have to copy and paste. We still tend to always copy and paste just because it's easier. We have them open on two different screens or on the same screen split in half and just an easy copy and paste. But know that you can probably ask it to, but you might not get exactly what you're looking for. And so, with that, I guess I just want to end, and I think I might have ended with this quote before, but really just also want to push this idea that this is a digital tool. And so, here in ECSD, we use Microsoft Copilot, which is becoming a much more effective generative artificial intelligence tool for ourselves. But Holly Clark said this. She said, paperless is not a pedagogy, and neither is AI. So you can't rely on AI to be the teacher and to just do the copy and paste. Again, Julia brought up numerous times the TQS. It is our responsibility to ensure that we are putting our expert lens on everything that we actually give to our students. So whether that's doing a Google search or using AI or photocopying something or giving a novel study recommendation, whatever it is, we have always put that expert lens on first prior to doing that with our students. And so um, I think that Julia, today, thank you for providing us with a really great template to help us design really effective lessons using that backwards design plan.
No worries. Thank you.
All right. And so, on that note, as I kind of click into here, I just want to thank everyone for joining us today on the MTech Pulse or EdTech Pulse. And we look forward to seeing you in our next episode. So, thank you again, Julia, for joining us.